Hey guys, welcome back into Legacy. So today I just want to hit up some cool stuff for one of the new game reviews here, and I'm going to hit up the Star Trek Next Generation particular as the one we're going to use to cover it, but it does involve multiple core books. The Last Unicorn game Star Trek role-playing system that uses the Icon system. I did give a brief kind of overview of what the system was in the description, but just so you guys know, the game was originally produced in 1998 by Last Unicorn Games, which is a really small press company. Didn't do a whole ton. They actually made the Dune Chronicles of the Imperium RPG as well that got purchased when Wizards purchased them. And they had to produce a certain limited run of those, and that's a whole interesting story on its own. But it was produced as the Last Generation or Next Generation in '98. And following in '99, they managed to produce an original series and a Deep Space Nine core book as well. And then in late '99, early 2000, they lost the license, which would then go to Decipher, which led to Decipher's Star Trek game in the early 2000s. Um, so that's the history of the game itself. Last Unicorn Games is an interesting company, surprisingly enough, were purchased by Wizards of the Coast. So Wizards actually owns them now. So I think they still own everything recording that they have under their proprietary licenses that they ever produced. So, um, as far as obtaining copies of this game, not available anywhere. Uh, not in hard copy, not in print, really, at all, unless you want to buy secondhand copies. They're not terribly expensive for the most part. Most of the books aren't. There's a couple of things that can be a little expensive. Uh, the Starfleet Academy box set's a tad bit expensive. I believe Among the Clans and Dorn's source book is a little expensive. And I want to say Holodeck Adventures is a little pricier in retrospect of the rest of the line. But you can get most of this line for relatively cheap on secondary market. There are no legal PDFs for this book. Does not mean that if you chose to go other routes, you couldn't find it. But honestly, guys, I encourage you to pick this game up in hard copy. It's worth your time. That all being said, uh, so what is the LUG Star Trek system? It uses a proprietary system called Icon, uh, all capitalized. It uses D6. D6 is alone for everything it does, and it rolls a D6 plus skill level versus difficulty. And I'll get into that here in a minute, exactly how the system works. But before I do that, I did want to talk a little bit about character creation and stuff, and do my standard review of this. So characters are created in a pretty simplistic way. They follow a life path system, as the general system for it is life path and packages, called templates and overlays and packages. Those are the three terms They use. Geez, I can't speak English. Um, and what's going to happen with these packages is they're going to give you your stat cost, your attributes, your starting skills, your starting talents, all that kind of stuff will come from these different talent or different overlays and stuff. I apologize, guys. I'm tripping over myself trying to keep the nomenclature in my head. Um, so, for example, if you wanted to play uh, a Vulcan, for example, will start with fitness 2, and yada, yada, yada. And it'll tell you this. It'll tell you what your fitness, your constitution, all the substats are. As a side note, let me go ahead and I'm going to do I still have it? I don't have the key up right now. Give me a second, guys. I apologize. I brought it up and accidentally closed it out. Let me bring it up real quick. I'm going to do you guys a favor so you can see what a character sheet for this game looks like. Share window. That's the one I want right there. Okay, guys, that is the character sheet for the game. So you can see kind of it's a little complicated as far as character sheets go. Lots of information. Zoom up a bit to make it just a bit bigger here. Okay, so this thing over here. WPS is not very friendly sometimes. But you can see up here, there's a lot of information, and you can see on the stat line here, you have stats, and then you have these subcategories of your stats, and those are called edges. Edges come into play when you have skill rolls, and again, I'll explain that here in a few minutes, so you can kind of see what a character sheet looks like, and then lower down on the sheet, you can tell this game is skill driven because it has a lot of room for skills. This particular sheet comes from Mad Irishman, which I appreciate Mad Irishman making this sheet because I've used it before. It's very good. Um, without getting too deep into it, now it's kind of I'm sorry guys, that's it. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna just go back to the screen. Little technical bugs that I'm having tonight. And that's the basis of the game, though, is going to be that, like I said. So the first thing you're going to do when you create characters is you're going to choose your what they call your template. Your template is your race. So the core book has, I'm trying to remember how many they have in here. They just have several. So they go, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different templates you can take from the core book. If you look into it or you use the other core books as well, they add additional templates for different races you can play. Different splat books will add new templates. And in fact, there's an entire box set on playing Romulans. So you can even play Romulan characters in this game. The second part of this character creation process, of course, is going to be what they call your overlay. Your overlay is going to be where you are, what you are on the ship, command, operations, science, that kind of stuff. They are in total their command, operations, engineer, security, science, medical, and ship's counselor. From this is again, we're just referencing Next Generation. This does not reference any other core book. So you have those as your overlays. They're going to give you a set of skills that you're going to get, and then you're going to get into the background development of your character. Your character background development is kind of unique. There are 2 ways to do your character. Like I said, the generic way to do it is the background templates, but you can do it by point buy. Most people don't do that. They don't allow it because it can lead to kind of broken characters. However, doing so in following the background life path system is a little easier because it gives you a package of skills and talents, and you're going to gain both perks and flaws from this. However, there is a good question here. What happens to a character that gets the same skill twice during creation? How do you handle that? It's pretty simple. There's 5 rules for this. If it's the same skill with a different specialization, you gain them both. So the example they use here is a Tellarite. He has History Tellar and History Federation. He gains both of them. He doesn't need to worry about it because they're different skills. And they're rated the same. If both sources provide different specializations at different levels, you take the higher level skill and no 2 specializations. So the example here is a Vulcan possesses 1 science skill and a chosen specialization at 2-3. The player chooses space science astronomy at 2-3. Later, he chooses deep space exploration mission, which grants space science stellar cartography at 1-2. On the character sheet, this becomes science astronomy 2-3 and stellar cartography 3. So basically, the simple way to put this is, is going to be that he's going to take the skill at a higher level, 1 level higher. And that's covered by this rule. If both sources provide the same skill, the same specialization at different levels, the character takes the higher skill level and add 1 point to either skill or the specialization. And guys, I promise you this makes little sense until I start kind of describing how the skill system works in this. But just know, so basically what they're saying is if you have 2 science skills, one at 1-2, and then you gain another specialization at 2-3, you can then take medical science at 3-3 or medical science surgery at 2-4. So, and that's with the same specialization at different levels. So, if if you gain the same specialization, because this game uses specialization under a lot of the skills, and I'll get into the skill specialization system here in just a second, like I said, because it's very important in this game because there's so many sub skills. So basically, just you don't want to take a lot of the same skills over and over again. Um, if both sources provide the same skill with the same specialization at the same level, you add 1 point to either your skill or the specialization. So if you gain vehicle operation shuttlecraft at the same level at the same time, you get to add a point to one or the other. And then if you don't have a specialization, they just add. If you're curious about this, this is all covered on in the book very clearly on page 69 of the book. So it is very much covered. And like I said, this is where I'm going to give you an example of how you get skills. Just real quick. So when you start creating your character, you're going to start with like early life history after you choose your template overlay. So say you want to be, I had a political upbringing. So you gain diplomacy with a specialization of your choice, language ability +2, contact +1, rival -1. Those are all perks and flaws. But so your first skill you get is diplomacy with specialization. So later on down the road, you can take another thing that gives you that same skill. So let's see if we can find one here. So the next thing you're going to take is your academy life. What did you do in the academy? Let's see if I can find one that gives you diplomacy. Okay, first contact training gives you diplomacy federation 1, 2. So this is a good way to show you how this works. So you start with diplomacy 1, 2. So say you take that same exact skill, you take first contact training, you take Federation Frontier as your specialization from early childhood. Instead of taking it again at 1, 2, you would just either add 1 point to diplomacy or 1 point to Federation Frontier. It really is that simple. And then you also, again, and it can be a little complicated because there's a lot of skills, a lot of sub skills, lots of specializations in this game. It's a lot to remember at times, but the process is not that difficult once you start doing it. And then you're going to start with a tour of duty. Generally speaking, you're going to start with a tour of duty. My general rule for character creation is you can take 1 tour of duty and then up to one additional tour for your starting characters. I generally don't allow more than 1 tour, additional tour. Theoretically, you can take as many as you want, depending on how old you want your character to be, and yada yada. And the tour of duty packages cover all kinds of things. You can be an academy instructor. You got a shakedown cruise, Starfleet command, terraforming colonization. So they cover all kinds of grounds. And again, you're getting all kinds of skills from this. They're giving you different skills. They're giving you all kinds of different boosts. And once you're done with the tours of duty, you're basically done with character creation. That's when you're going to get into things, some of the subsystems in this game, which are going to be things such as, which is on the second page here. Oh, it was just on it. Which is going to be your courage and your renown. Every character starts with 3 courage points, period. And renown, it's going to be based off of several factors. You're going to gain renown with 1 point in any aspect of your choosing, but certain tours of duty and things like that can also grant you renown. So you may start with additional renown. The renown ranks represent different aspects of being a Starfleet officer. So, just for example, initiative covers risk taking, experimentalism, boldness, and willingness to disobey orders. Characters with high initiative renown are seen as mavericks or daredevils. A Nooning Song has a high initiative renown. His research in androids to find the eventual scientific wisdom. So, renown is very important in this game because that's how you're going to interact with for new species and things like that. And honestly, guys, that is legitimately, as complicated as some of that sounds, it's not all that super difficult. mechanically. Um, as far as system basics go, I'm not going to delve too much into the Starfleet combat system. Starship combat in this game plays almost like a miniatures game. It does require a lot of math and a lot of work. So I'm not going to delve into that one too deep, but I'm going to get to the basics of the skill system and stuff here. So the big thing to remember with LUG Trek in particular is LUG Trek loves its uh, it loves its sub skills. It loves its specializations. Let's just be fair. Um, two characters can be built as diplomatic characters and come out very different because of the specialization system in this game. So, for example, going back to the diplomacy concept, you can have sub or specialties of commercial treaties, Federation law, intergalactic law, planetary affairs. That's pretty crazy, the stuff you can get. And that's just one skill. So tons of different skills in this game that wind up really, like I said, just being very specific to um, to this game. It makes it feel more like a Star Trek game. Um, and the book does a great job of really explaining how uh, how to use the skills at the different skill levels and the difficulty levels and all of that. So honestly, if you're looking at the game book, it's a really good game book. But as far as the mechanics of the system go, uh, this game's mechanics are going to be pretty simple. You're going to roll a number of dice equal to the stat that is tied to the skill. So if you are trying to be diplomatic, for example, you very likely are going to be rolling presence plus diplomacy, and or presence. Yeah, presence. Sorry, let me say it right. You're going to be rolling presence number of dice. So if you have a 4 presence, you roll 4d6. You are going to keep the highest die in the pool, and you're going to add the skill rank for diplomacy to it. So if you have a skill rank of 2 in diplomacy, you roll a 4, you have a 6 total. There you go. Willpower, the way edges work, willpower and empathy, they are expressed as pluses and minuses. If the edge would apply to the situation, you will add those dice or subtract those dice depending on if they're positive or negative from the dice pool. So say you're playing a beta Z, you are rolling presence plus diplomacy, and empathy is important. You have a +2 edge in that. You're going to roll 6 dice instead of 4. Edges are for very specific cases. Honestly, that's the way edges are handled. And psionic powers are even handled like skills. So just for record. As far as that's the basics of the system, the other thing that goes into the die pool is you roll 1 die that's called the drama die. The drama die is a d6 that is going to come out every time you roll, and if it rolls a 1 or a 6, it's a good thing. If it is, it's going to be different based on that. If it's nothing else, so the way this works is if you roll a 6 on the drama die, you add the drama die and the next highest die to your skill. So it's pretty simple when you use the drama die. And the way the drama die works is, if you've ever played the original Star Wars D6, very similar. One of your dice should be an off color, and that represents your drama die. Just for the record, you do not add it separately. It is a standard die. So drama dice function like every other die unless it's a 6 or a 1. If you roll a 1 on the drama die, you may have grievously failed. If all your other dice are 1s, then a dramatic failure has definitely occurred. So success in this game can be very spectacular. It can also be very poor. Sometimes you have to roll a 6 on the drama die to get success. Standard difficulty for this game is a 4, uh, whereas nearly impossible is going to be a 15. So number difficulties are going to typically range between about 3 and 13ish. That's going to be starting to get very difficult to ask. Most of the time, you're probably going to see between 3 and 10. Anything higher than that, you're starting to get into doing things that are weird and very, very difficult to pull off. If you ever roll more than 6 greater than the difficulty number for any reason, you get what's called a dramatic success. Dramatic successes are determined by the GM and the player basically working together. You determine how that looks, and it's amazing. And not only do you succeed with like a great boon to it. On the opposite end, if you fail the test by 6 or more, you dramatically fail. Similar to as if you had rolled all ones on a roll with the drama die coming up with a 1 as well. So you're going to get failures like that. And again, that is the opposite of the success, dramatic success. Dramatic failure is something catastrophic has gone wrong. You've broken the console. The torpedo doesn't launch. Yada, yada, yada. The other way you can kind of change, I already talked about how edges impact rolls. The other way that you can impact a roll is you can spend courage points, which I mentioned you get 3 of them at the start. You can spend one to increase the total of the dice that you roll. Never spending more than 4 in a combat round or in a single action. So it's pretty simple. Courage points pretty simple. You can roll simple attribute tests as well. Attribute tests are rolled just like skill tests, except you're just using your attributes, and you're not adding anything to the die. And then opposed test in this game, pretty simple as well. You roll your stat, and you're going to roll it just like you would in a normal test. The opponent's going to roll like a normal test. Whoever gets the higher number wins. If there's a tie, whoever has the higher number on the drama die wins. If there's a tie, whoever initiates the test wins. I mean, it's seriously that easy to get into. You can do combined tests and unskilled checks. Again, I'm not trying to get too deep into the weeds on some of the stuff, extended testing and all of that. The book covers all of that, guys. But as far as the system itself goes, going back to the more general part of the system, this system really is, to me, and I've heard this from several people. I've heard this several times over. A lot of people consider this to be the best reflection of Star Trek on the market, or to come out in the market at different times, because it does such a good job of really reflecting the feel of Star Trek, the idea of diplomacy and skills being important and the renown system and all of that stuff folding together really creates a game that requires you to really think like you're in Starfleet. And each core book does a great job of really reflecting the setting it's written for. Deep Space Nine is not written around Starfleet officers, for example. You can play Starfleet officers, but it's written around playing like regular people on Deep Space Nine. Original series is a lot more dramatic, I would say, than Next Generation is. But the system itself, at its core, the icon system, is very functional and works very well and does what it's supposed to do very well. And like I said, if you're looking for an RPG to play Star Trek universe in, you won't go wrong with this one. You will not. There are versions of Star Trek that are definitely easier to play. They're not as crunchy. For the negatives of this game, it is definitely a baby of the 1990s. You can tell that with the skill system in particular. It's very crunchy skill system-wise. Combat can be very crunchy and very awkward because, again, combat is not a big part of Star Trek. You're not supposed to shoot each other. It's kind of the whole shtick with Star Trek. But there are parts of this game that are very, very awkward and written very awkwardly. Phraseology in this book is written very awkward at times because of its age, because of its era. But I've read through decipher Star Trek. I've read through vast Star Trek. I have not read all the way through Star Trek Adventures, but I'm not a big fan of the idea of the 2D20 system in application of Star Trek. The stuff I have read for Modiphius of Star Trek is not impressive to me. It runs more like an adventure game than a Star Trek episode, and that's my personal opinion on it. But if you are looking for that Star Trek experience, LUG Trek will make you happy. Characters are well developed. You can go to us. There's a site online called Memory Icon. Tons of unreleased splat books that are now netbooks. Tons of information on running different types of games. There are character sheets you can print out there. Like I said, I prefer Matt Irishman. His sheet's one of the best sheets. But if you're looking for a really good game that you can enjoy for Star Trek, I'm not going to reiterate this anymore. Guys, jump on this one. You won't be disappointed. The only disadvantage for it right now is some of the difficulty getting your hands on it. But it generally is up for sale quite often. So you can find it on eBay. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it pretty much anywhere it sells third-party books, 8 books, half-price books online will probably have it. You can find this game if you're looking. So either way, guys, as always, welcome thoughts, comments, questions, concerns. As always, follow the 3 rules. No ad hominems, no picking fights, no college dissertations. Other than that, we do hope you guys have fun, and we do hope